We're getting this preliminary information from our content partners over at the Associated Press. According to them, they are saying that Hezbollah launched dozens of rockets into Israel this Wednesday morning, including a longer range projectile that set off air raid sirens in Tel Aviv, Israel, and across central Israel. It was the group's farthest strike yet in nearly a year of exchanges. Israel said they did intercept the projectile, and there were no reports of casualties or damage. Joining us live this morning to further discuss the latest in this breaking news situation is Alireza Jafarzadeh, the Deputy Director of National Council of Resistance of Iran-U.S. Representative Office. Alireza, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jane. Always a pleasure to be on your show. Definitely.
So, Alireza, this just further shows the conflict with Hezbollah continues at this hour. But we can't forget that's not the only conflict, also conflict with Hamas and Iran. Could you catch us up, please?
Well, definitely, I think the issue is not what's been happening today or yesterday or the past few days. The Iran regime has been at the center of all the conflicts, all the violence and everything happening in the region. I've said on this show before that the head of the snake of war and terror lies in Tehran, and it's been on the display everywhere. And clearly, none of those conflicts are going to end so long as the mullahs rule in Iran. And that was actually the subject of the talk at the UN just yesterday. The Iran regime's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, addressed the UN, lashing out the rest of the world, accusing everyone around the world of terrorism, of violence, and all of that. But the record of the regime itself is on display. There was a huge rally across from the United Nations that engulfed several thousand Iranian Americans who come from all over the United States. With a message that was very clear. It was a three-pronged message. First, they said that Pezeshkian does not represent the people of Iran. He only represents the supreme leader Khamenei and the regime that that he's ruling. And he has presided over 178 executions of prisoners since just last month that he took office. Second, they said that the demand of the people of Iran is to bring down the Iran regime, as if we have seen in various demonstrations and uprising in all 31 provinces of Iran since 2018, that this regime must be brought down by the people of Iran. And third, they said there is an alternative to this regime. The world doesn't have to deal with the Ayatollahs. The alternative is very powerful, is engaged in protests and destabilizing the regime inside the country. They have a very clear platform known as a 10-point plan of Mrs. Mariam Rajavi that speakers after speakers came to support it because it's diametrically opposite to the extremist mentality of the regime. It favors the ballot box as being the sole criteria for legitimacy. It calls for peace in the Middle East. It calls for the separation of religion and state, gender equality, human rights, free market economy, and a non-nuclear republic, Iran. And that's the kind of agenda I think the rest of the world should look at. We shouldn't accept that the violence in the region has been there and is going to continue to be there. No, there is a way to end it. And the people of Iran are up in accomplishing that, ending the violence in the whole region that starts really by ending the rule of the Ayatollahs by the people of Iran. That reality must be recognized.
Well, Alireza, we always appreciate your candidness and expertise on the topic. And as you mentioned, this UN meeting, since we did transition to it, it comes at a time of conflict in the Middle East. And I know you did submit some video that we were able to see. We aren't able to show it now for clearance purposes. But, the protests that are underway and people across America just shows how conflicts in the Middle East has trickled over here, as we saw across college campuses and universities during the last education year. So we will continue to monitor this. You also raised a good point about the threat of Iran. And as we are discussing Hezbollah and the strikes that are happening, against Israel, there's also the concern of potential strikes from Iran as relates to nuclear capabilities. If you could provide that context, please.
Well, the Iranian regime has been the epicenter of terrorism and violence and the repression, the whole region, including inside Iran. The Iran regime has a very advanced nuclear weapons program that since day one, it was always about building the nuclear bomb. And of course, our movement, talking about the capabilities of the opposition to the Iran regime, our movement exposed the key nuclear sites of Iran in August of 2002 that triggered the international inspections by the Atomic Energy Organization of, the UN, known as the IAEA, that we revealed the nuclear sites in Natanz and Iraq and so many other nuclear sites that shed light on the realities of the Iran regime. We also exposed the missile program of the Iran regime, the drone program of the Iran regime, how they're actually funding these proxy groups in the region. It's not a coincidence that the new president of the regime, Masoud Pezeshkian, before he even came to the United Nations and shortly after he was handpicked by the supreme leader to be the new president of the regime, his first foreign trip was to Iraq and meeting with the leaders of the Shia militias, expressing support for all of the proxies there, and praised the terror master Qasem Soleimani, who was the head of the Quds force that engaged in terrorism in the whole region. And he was killed along with his Iraqi counterpart in 2020 by the United States. Pezeshkian praised him. So that sets the pace that, okay, this is the path that the regime is going to continue supporting proxies, whether it's the Houthis in Yemen, the Hezbollah you just mentioned in Lebanon, and the Shia militias in Iraq, you name it, the whole region. And that's why any way you look at things, the Iran regime is at the center of it. But also the important thing is that to look for the solution, because we can always talk about the problem. If we don't address the issue of the solution, it will continue. And the solution lies in regime change by the people of Iran. And that's very doable. That's very possible. The message of the rally yesterday in front of the UN was all about that there is an alternative, there's a viable alternative, there's a clear-cut platform, there's a viable leadership, and there's support inside Iran, outside of Iran. There are those called resistance units. These are mostly young people who are on a day-to-day basis acting as engine for change, risking their lives. And we need to talk about those who want to bring about change in Iran if we want to end the violence in the whole region.
Alireza, thank you so much for joining us for this breaking news alert this Wednesday morning. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you.